Greetings and welcome to another episode of Catholicism and Coffee. I'm Stephen Kaczynski.
I'm Beth Kaczynski.
We talk about Catholicism, all things Catholic, the saints, the Mass, all kinds of stuff, and enjoy some great brews. Today, we get to wish you a happy feast day of Saint Titus. Now, you probably have heard the name because there is a book of St. Paul's letter to Titus. So, who was Saint Titus? Now, there were some scripture scholars who believe that Titus was actually a nickname for Timothy, but there's some conflicting scriptural evidence that prove that actually Titus was a completely different person. So, who was St. Titus? Well, when we first meet St. Titus, he's actually mentioned a few times before his letter to...
St. Paul's letter to Titus.
St. Paul's letter. The letter that was addressed to him. There we go. I think he was mentioned in Acts as well, but he was mostly noted in 2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians is when I think we first see his name, if it's not in Acts, and then we don't really know him, it's just a passing name, like a lot of names, because like Salome, for example, we don't really know who she is besides one of the women who went to see Jesus. But then we get to know a little more about him in Galatians.
Yeah. What we know, we believe a lot of people believe he was Greek, because he was a native of the island of Crete, well, the city of Crete. He was believed to be appointed there as a bishop by Paul shortly after. Paul traveled to Crete and handled some stuff. He was one of St. Paul's many companions, including Barnabas and Timothy.
Yeah, and I think in Galatians we see him traveling with Paul and Barnabas. And we also learn a pretty key fact about St. Titus is that he was a Gentile.
Yeah. He was not Jewish, but he was sort of a courier for Paul a few times as well, delivering stuff to Jerusalem regarding various things, including whether any new Christians who are Gentiles should live as Jews do, such as the circumcision and stuff like that, and following Jewish purity laws and all that jazz. But as I said, we learn a little bit more about you, as you said, we learn a little bit more about him in Galatians, but we really get to know a lot about him in the letter to Titus. The letter to Titus is very short.
3 chapters.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4 chapters. It was 3 chapters, right? And what mostly makes up the letter to Titus?
Yeah, well, Paul is giving Titus a lot of instructions about kind of how to be a preacher, how to handle church authorities, that kind of thing. Yeah,
one of the things he actually did was one of his jobs as the bishop of Crete was to appoint presbyters or priests, people who handled all the church administrative stuff. And he actually gave him a very solid list of qualifications, if you will, of men who were married. He recommended men who were married, men who were of solid repute, who didn't cause any mayhem. So, like, I forgot which book this is, but there was one guy who was apparently having a little something going on with his stepmother. So he wouldn't make the cut.
No.
And just men who were solid in the faith. And there were also, he gave him a lot of instruction how to deal with various people, such as older and younger women, young men and women, recommending how they should conduct themselves as husbands and wives, and there's the infamous, under the mission, follow the husband's mission. Read Ephesians, you'll get what we're talking about. We had it right at our wedding, so.
Yeah, I guess we need to do an episode on Ephesians.
I'm down for it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of instruction on how to deal with various issues. And he also warned him to be on the site for false prophets. Like, there were a lot of Jewish Christians who were causing dissent. Now, causing dissent, and people are like, oh, that sounds very tyrannical. No, it's people who are working in bad faith, who are just trying to cause issues with, like, preaching false teaching. Saying that, in order to be Christian, you have to follow Jewish purity laws. No. Stuff like that, whereas, some people will be like, oh, if you are a little questioning authority or whatever. You're a dissenter. No, you're not. Actually, we're doing what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to keep our eye open for people who are doing stuff against the church and her teaching that has held up for over 2,000 years. That's our job. And this was something that Paul actually instructed Titus to do. And there's quite a bit of detail. It's a great book to read. Just a good sit down. If you're considering ministry and such, and you're trying to appoint your leadership team, that's
Make them read the book of Titus.
I would make that required reading.
Okay.
Because you would learn a lot. And these are pretty good, and who's considered, one of the apostles. He kind of knew what he was talking about, and he set up multiple churches throughout a good part of Asia. And he was in the council of the first pope, even though the two of them butted heads a few times.
Yeah, there's one term you use that I found really interesting, and that's a Jewish Christian, because we don't hear that a lot these days, but it really shows this great unity that Christianity has to the Jewish faith, and that the Jews became the first Christians.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I guess they didn't just all of a sudden be like, oh, we're Christians now. It was a bit of a time transition.
There was a bit of transition. There was a lot of confusion because they weren't sure, but we have the Old Testament. Oh, the Old Testament is not written out. Jesus was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. But what should we consider in, the building of the Bible and the scriptures? Now, they didn't have a full Bible yet. The closest we had was the Didache. Very good reading. Definitely look into that. Probably some of part of Titus was probably in the Didache.
Probably. Yeah. If you just think about it, it's like the apostles were Jews, and the Jewish faith was not abolished by Jesus. It was fulfilled. But what they've turned their back on, what they've known their entire lives, basically, 12, obviously not the Gentiles like Paul and Titus who converted.
Paul wasn't a Gentile.
Oh, he wasn't?
No, he was Jewish.
Oh, he was Jewish?
He was a rabbi.
Oh.
Yeah. That's why he was persecuting Christians, because he thought they were
That's right.
They were dissenters of the Jewish faith, when actually they were for the fulfillment. They were the next step above.
Yep, but it just makes a lot of sense. They used the term Jewish Christian.
And as I said, this was still in the time when we weren't, the church herself in her infancy was still not sure if we were supposed to follow the Jewish purity laws of eating only eating certain meats and such like that. Oh.
Thankfully, we can have bacon now.
Thank God. I wouldn't survive.
Yeah. There's another interesting kind of relationship between Paul and Titus that shows he kind of ordained Titus in a way.
No, he was one of his proteges. One of several.
Yeah, because Paul, he had a lot of authority. I mean, he wrote a lot of the New Testament. And then he's just appointing Titus, now you go and carry out this ministry.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what we see in ordination today, where a bishop ordains a priest and says, okay, now you fulfill the mission of God.
Yeah, do this job in my church, because the church is so spread out, and there's so many churches that need good shepherds, and he was giving him really good instruction for his shepherds. If I were a bishop, which I'm not going to be, because I would be reading Titus a lot. And then I tell my priests to read Titus. A lot. That's just me, though. I could be Pope. Maybe I'll make everyone read Titus.
What's going to happen if they don't read Titus?
I'm not going to talk about that. So, anything else you want to add?
So, is Titus the patron saint of anything cool or special?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. He is the patron of the U.S. Army Corps, the U.S. Army Chaplain Corps. Now, we know a couple of chaplains in our lives. I know, we know, you know, and I both know at least two. I probably know more. But they're so very important. So if you're in the priesthood who are serving in the armed forces, and call on Saint Titus as your patron. He'll come through for you.
And maybe if you're considering going into the armed forces, pray to Saint Titus.
Yeah, he knows things. So you got at least a couple of good ones. You got Saint Michael and Saint Titus. So that's some good company. Anything else?
I think that sums up Saint Titus.
All right.
And his feast day is January 26th.
Yep. So by the time you see this, it'll be. So happy feast day of Saint Titus. And Saint Titus, pray for us. We need all the help we can get. And read the book of Titus. You'll whip through it pretty quick. In our New American Standard Bible, it's like a page and a half with like a ton of footnotes to add some context of what was going on historically at that point. So there's so much going on there. And definitely read a lot of Paul, obviously read Paul's letters. I mean, there are sometimes our Protestant brothers and sisters look at Paul's letters more than the Gospels, but you know. But that does not invalidate the good work of St. Paul.
No.
So let's look at both, because they feed into each other. Let's remember that. I think we've beaten this steak pretty well. So, in the meantime, be bold, be brave, be courageous, continue to pray, drink coffee.
Absolutely.
Or tea, or whatever caffeinated beverage suits you.
Or uncaffeinated if it's too close to your bedtime. But not decaf.
No, that's sadness. It makes me cry. We don't want to see that. It's bad.
No, we don't.
All right. God bless.